Professor Namyong Lee's philosophical essay long, "The world is not a collection of objects, but a symphony of relationships. Human thought must now be reconstructed and reinterpreted not around objects, but around relationships. Everything exists only within relationships. For centuries, humankind has asked, 'What is being?' a question that has shaped theology, founded philosophy, and guided scientific inquiry. Yet throughout this long history, humanity has often misunderstood existence itself as a substance. To grasp that supposed substance, we postulated gods, divided atoms, and refined logic. But no substance truly exists in isolation. Every entity gains meaning only through its relations. The sun is the sun only within its gravitational relationship with the planets. Language becomes meaningful only through the relationship between subject and object. A human becomes human only through relations with others. When relationships break, existence dissolves. The essence of being is not what something is, but how it exists. The world is not a static assembly of things. It is a dynamic network of ever-weaving and ever-unfolding relationships. Traditional theology was constructed on a one-way, vertical relationship between the absolute and humankind. Christian theology defined the relation between God and humans as that of creator and dependent creature. Augustine's theory of grace and Thomas Aquinas' natural law never escaped this paradigm. In such a framework, humanity was reduced to a passive vessel, not an active participant. God stood at the center of the relationship, while humanity lingered in its shadow. This structure extinguished the dynamism of relation. Now, theology must reinterpret relationship not as domination from above to below, but as creative reciprocity. Professor Namyong Lee argues that God and humanity are not opposites, but co-evolving existences. The human spirit is a part of the divine order and continues God's creative act. Thus, when humanity creates, God creates through humanity. Philosophy, too, has long been confined within narrow human-centered relationships. Socrates said, "Know thyself." Aristotle categorized being. Descartes made human reason the measure of all existence. Yet such philosophies always placed the human at the center. Hegel's dialectic described the flow of relationships, but ultimately returned to an absolute spirit, another substance. Heidegger, in Being and Time, emphasized Dasein, being there, and the relational nature of existence, but he, too, remained bound by human perception. Human-centered philosophy subjugated relation to cognition, but relationships existed before and beyond the human mind. Even without humans, atoms interact, galaxies dance under gravity, and life evolves through networks of relations. Professor Lee calls for a universal, relational ontology, a philosophy in which all existence is defined by its interconnectedness. Natural sciences, mathematics, linguistics, and engineering must all be interpreted as grammars of relationships among objects. Mathematics, long thought to be the study of numbers, is in truth a formal language of relationships. The statement 1 + 1 = 2 is not a description of numbers, but a symbolic expression of combination, a relation. Numbers are operands. Symbols like plus and equals are operators that define relationships. Functions, vectors, matrices, and calculus are all formalized relational structures between operands and operators. Language works similarly. Nouns are objects. Verbs express relationships. In the sentence, "A man sees a flower," meaning arises only from the relational verb sees. If natural language is the narrative of relations, programming language is its logical structure. Artificial intelligence, in turn, is the mathematical modeling of relationships. Mathematics orders relationships. Language describes them. AI simulates them. All problem solving is the recomposition of relationships. When we transform a problem space into a solution space, we must identify objects and clarify their relationships. In software engineering, the Unified Modeling Language, UML, articulates these relations. Abstraction generalizes common attributes. Specialization concretizes general ones. Instantiation creates specific instances from abstract types. Realization transforms concepts into realities. Links connect individual objects. Associations relate object types. Aggregation describes loose part-whole relations. Composition describes strong, life-sharing wholes. Dependency shows functional reliance. Inheritance transfers attributes and behaviors from parent to child objects. These UML relations, pioneered by Grady Booch and Walker Royce, reveal not merely software structures, but the very architecture of existence itself. The universe is a vast object-oriented system. God, humanity, nature, and technology all interface through relationship. That interface is relationship itself. Modern science has already shifted toward relational paradigms. Newtonian mechanics emphasized independent bodies, but Einstein's relativity viewed even space-time as a relational field. Quantum mechanics describes particles not as fixed substances, but as relational probability waves. Biology explains life as genetic networks. Ecology studies the equilibrium of relationships. Network science now places links above nodes. AI, big data, graph theory, and complexity theory all are sciences of relationships. The age of object-centered thought has given way to the age of relational science. God is not an isolated entity, but perfect relation itself. The doctrine of the Trinity already symbolizes this relational ontology. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are not separate beings, but a unity of relationships. Professor Lee interprets the mystery of the Trinity through relational ontology, just as Heidegger's Dasein and Booch's UML both articulate existence as relationship, so too does the Trinity represent divine relational being. Love is the energy of relationship. Truth is the coherence of relationship. Goodness is the harmony of relationship. Evil is the distortion of relationship. Sin is the severance of relationship. Thus, salvation is the restoration of relationship. Theology must move beyond viewing humanity as a subordinate creation and instead see God and humanity as partners in mutual realization. God exists as relationship. This is the new paradigm of 21st century theology. Philosophy must now become relational ontology. Being is no longer a thing, but an in-between. Relational philosophy views existence as a field of interactions rather than isolated entities. Just as Heidegger lamented that philosophy had forgotten being, modern thought has forgotten the essence of relationship. Existence is the result of relations. The human is the mediator of relations. Philosophy must evolve into a philosophy of genesis, a philosophy of relational becoming. In the information age, society itself is relational. Digital civilization is the theology of networks. Social networks, data linkages, algorithmic interactions, all are operations of relation. AI learns relationships. Networks visualize them. We are digital beings composed of relational totalities. Hence, theology must evolve into digital theology and philosophy into info-philosophy. Their shared mission is to interpret not data, but the meaning of relationships. Data are dead relations. Information is living relation. Relationship is the language of God. The essence of being is relation. Relation manifests as physical energy, unfolds as mental meaning, and fulfills itself as divine order. Theology explores the spirituality of relation, philosophy its rationality, science its mathematics, and art its sensibility. Civilizations decline when relational order collapses and revive when relational harmony is restored. Evil emerges through the rupture of relations, good arises from their integration. Thus, the future of humanity must be a science of relational synthesis, a relational synthesis that unifies theology, philosophy, science, and art into a single relational structure. The world is not a collection of objects, but a symphony of relationships. Thank you very much for listening. Professor Namyong Lee.